And okay, so good morning, everybody. Hopefully it's still a morning for you, or not. This is gonna end up late for you guys. So welcome back to the third day of the fourth bootcamp. With me, I have my colleague Joao Martins. You want to say a quick
Hi, good
hello?
morning.
So Joao is gonna be helping me out in the background with questions and stuff like that while I present. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section. Joao is quite fast at responding some stuff, so definitely take advantage of that. And we will gonna get started. So let me share my screen, and that way we take it away. Okay. All right. So I think you can see my screen okay. I think you guys are seeing this one, which should be fine. So again, welcome back. Actually, it is not September 13th, sorry. It is September 15th. I'm originally from Guatemala, so today for me it's Independence Day. So my name again, Jaime Rosales. I'm a senior developer advocate for the Forge platform. If you're a Twitter user, this is my handle, AfroJME. The reason why it's because I do have a long hair. It's just tied back right now. But yeah, so feel free to follow me, reach me out through there. Let's have conversations over there. It's actually quite nice to interact with the community. So about the event, this is day 3 for the tutorials. So I think I recognize some people from the first day. I think Joao recognized some people from the second day as well as the first one. So welcome back. And if for those of you that it's the first time that you're taking this bootcamp in the week, well, welcome. Thanks for joining us again. So during the sessions itself, basically what we do is like we do some coding, we answer questions also, and then in between the sessions, so whenever we finish with showing you what we're going to be working during each session, it's going to be your turn to do the coding and also to submit questions for us to look over. Okay. So when it comes to the schedule for the week, this is going to be us right now. So Wednesday, September the 15th. And what we're going to be doing today is customizing the viewer and adding dashboards to your application. So we're going to be tapping into purely JavaScript development for the most part, since the viewer itself is based on WebGL and 3JS. We have a way to interact with it through the use of JavaScript as well. So we will show you some of the skeleton of an extension itself, and then a little bit more advanced later on how to modify the projects that we worked on the past 2 days in order to include dashboard functionality. So in that way, you can kind of like get this metadata out of your CAD models, a little bit more exposure and more functionality for you and your customers. So day 3, like I said, we're going to be customizing the viewer and adding dashboards to your functionality. And what that's going to look like, it's basically like this. So we're going to be doing 3 things today. And we're going to start with the top left. Basically, it's adding a simple extension to the toolbar that what it does is when we select some of those objects in the model and we click on the extension, what it's doing is that it's recognizing which ones are the ones selected. It's giving us the IDs for those elements. And then what we are doing is a viewer isolation of the selected objects, and then basically making them the focus ones for the display in the viewer. The second extension on the right side, top right, it's basically getting an access into a model summary. So we know that the models itself have a lot of metadata, and we want to focus into some specific data that comes in from there. So in this case, if you have some sort of manufacturing model, let's say we want to focus into the model summary of the material, but also if we have some AEC models, we can also focus in other categories like the type name and then also the material as well. So it depends what kind of model we're going to be interacting with, but the data itself is kind of present. And because we're preparing the data in order to get a display into the model summary, something very similar can be applied to the third example that we have here on the bottom. So basically, once we prepare that CAD data, we have a way to use third-party libraries such as Chart.js, for example, to feed those graphs with the metadata that we prepared previously. So we can actually bring them into the graphs, and then from there do a display of the different categories. And at the same time, also with some kind of event triggering from the graphs to interact with the viewer. So let's say we have a display in the graph about all the HVAC system, and we want to isolate and highlight all that into the model. We can select that part into the graph, and then this will get isolated directly into the viewer. So it's quite useful. It's very kind of like at the beginning state of some of those interactions with the viewer, but there is a lot of benefit from later on for you to expand into different functionality. Let's say you want to obtain all that data, bring it into some kind of ERP system, or just do an exportation to Excel or something like that. This kind of gives you that kind of idea. And we do have a lot of native extensions within the viewer. So if you stay towards the end, I can show you some of those extensions as a bonus. I don't think we tend to do this, but you guys have been quite nice of attending the event, so I can show you some bonus on some cool extensions and functionalities that we have within the viewer already. Okay, so 4 sessions for today. We are going to be focused on the PST time zone, so Pacific Time Coast. Basically, for me, based in New York, it's not 8 a.m. for me, it's 11 a.m. for me, but that's okay. I'm going to be here. So I'm going to be talking right now for the next 23 minutes up to when we get to 8:30 a.m. And we're going to go into covering the topics for the intro and the setup. I know that some of you have already seen this from the past days and all that, but we just want to make sure that you have everything ready for when we start digging a little bit deeper into the session 2. And then also we do have some people that are kind of like first timers with the bootcamp this week. So it will also benefit for them to go over this. Okay, so when it comes to the intro and the setup, the first step itself, you need a Forge account. Okay, so you need a Forge account and you need an app within the Forge account. So what that means is you register for a Forge account and then activate the free trial. So we're not asking you to pay anything today. Basically, the free trial itself gives you 90 days to test it out. It gives you 100 cloud credits that you're going to be able to use in order to translate the models and then do different kind of functionalities. So for example, tomorrow, we're going to have a bootcamp about design automation. So that one consumes credits as well, and you can automate tasks with the use of the different engines that we have hosted in the cloud. But once you have the Forge account, now you have a chance to do and create a Forge application. This Forge application itself would allow you to select the different services that you want your app to have access to it. Once you select those services, at the same time, you're going to give it a name, a description, and a callback URL. I don't think we're going to be using the callback URL today as much as I was intended to, but some of you only probably attended the yesterday bootcamp, and that one does need the callback URL, so it's fine. You can leave it like that. And if you have your app from the previous day, you can reuse that one as well. So that's no problem. When it comes to the development setup, I'm going to be using today Node.js. So, and don't worry, if you're using .NET, that's completely okay as well. We have Joao for the backup on that part in case you have any problems in the runtime. But when it comes to the Node.js one, if you do not have Node.js, it's recommended to get the LTS version. Don't go with the experimental one. It might have some bugs in there that still need to be figured out. So I will say safer to just go with the LTS version. For development environment, we are big fans of Visual Studio. So we use the Visual Studio Code IDE. We recommend a stable build for you to get it. And also I will give you, for those of you that attended the first 2 days, I will also, and well, the ones that are attending for the first time, We'll also give you a little sneak peek into some extension that we actually have available within Visual Studio Code. And that's one of the reasons that we tend to recommend it, that you can later on use. So this is going to be like little bonus and stuff that I'm going to be throwing during the session. So that way you guys kind of like get the most out of this of today. If it comes to development setup on .NET as well, we recommend the Visual Studio Community 2019 and the workloads itself for the ASP.NET web development and also the .NET desktop development. So probably some of you did the boot camps in the last 2 days using .NET, or the ones that are first timers feel more comfortable with .NET, and that's okay. Like I said before, we're not going to be doing a lot of server-side stuff today, actually none, other than just running the project. And then everything is going to happen on the client side. So everything is going to happen on the HTML, CSS, JavaScript side. Okay. So as a starting point, in case you do not have the projects that we worked on the previous 2 days, there is a simpler way for you to get this project and then just get started and then don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go over what we need to have in order to finalize for the first section of the training. And I'm going to point you out also to, in case you do not have the starting point, you can go over and try to get that project as well. Okay, so we're going to do demo time now. So let me actually switch screens. Yes, one. Let me turn on my busy notification. Let's go here. Okay. So again, the material itself is available within the learnforge.autodesk.io site. So if you're first timer seeing the site, it's always good to go over the LearnForge. Like, what is it? What does it do? And what can we use the platform for? And then before you start coding as well, like I said, you need to go into the developer portal. Once you go into the developer portal, we can go into sign in or sign up. In this case, I am already signed in, so I can just go to my apps. So once I go into my apps, I can create a new app from here. I do have this one that we created. So where I have the different services that I'm going to be using, and I have the client ID available and my secret. So secret you can get a copy by simply just doing a click. It will copy. In case your ID gets exposed. So this is something very important. Your client secret should never actually be exposed. In this case, I'm exposing it, but we're gonna fix this right now by just doing a quick regenerate. And now I don't know my key and you don't know my key, but I can just quickly copy it and then start using it in order to connect to this same app again. When it comes to the callback URL, since we're debugging locally, we recommend doing some localhost 3000 callback URL, followed by a couple of extra parts on the path. I'm not asking you to remember this 100%. You can just come here into the before you start coding and basically get it from this side. And the thing is, like, this callback, it can be whatever you want once you start doing your own project. But if you're going to be using the tutorial material, we have made every single project actually with the paths for the endpoint to work in this way. So the callback URL applies to all of them. Okay. So then we go into tools. And again, we can go into the Node.js one, get Node.js from the site. Basically, again, get the LTS version, download this one, install this one. And you can do a quick check once you have Visual Studio Code if Node.js actually got installed correctly. And then Visual Studio Code as well, we recommend from here if you're using Node.js. And then you can download the stable build, depending on what kind of operating system you're using. You have different kind of options here. So Windows users, Linux users, or macOS users. If we go back and then if we go into the .NET Framework one, so again, we have any flavor of Visual Studio Code, but we do recommend for this tutorial the Community Edition, so you can get the installer from here.
Actually, just one consideration: we are using .NET Core and not Framework.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, right. So in that case, let's go to .NET Core. So from here as well, sorry, the .NET Core part, you can get the download installer and then just basically go through the steps here. Oh, sorry, my mouse again. And yeah, just get started with that. Okay, so now the next step is we need a project that basically starts with this. I do have it from the previous bootcamp that I did on Monday. So if I run this, assuming that I did not change my stuff, let's see. It's just I have a okay, so now I have this project already running from the previous day. And again, my mouse, where we have the access to the buckets. We create new buckets from here if we want to, and the access also to the files that we upload and that we can translate. And once we have those translated, we have a way to use them directly from the viewer. Okay, so this is gonna be actually the end of the session one, mainly that you need to finish session one with a project running like this. Okay, so now if you do not have the project from the previous one, instead of going through, well, you have enough time. If you wanted to do it and just go through the steps, you could do that. But if you don't want to do that, we also give you the entire download project ready for you to use. So we have the Node.js one, and we have also the .NET Core one. So if you go into here, you see that we are at the Learn Forge View Models public repo, and make sure that you have this section selected as Node.js. The links itself bring you to this part selected because we do have different kind of versions in here. But I will say the Node.js one, it's something that it's quite easy to work with. You can download this entire project. So you download a zip, and then you can just extract this. You are gonna need to go through the README with the steps. So, and again, something important is that if you do not have Node.js, you need to install Node.js. And then we're gonna start adding like the client ID, the client secret, in order for us to be able to run this project. So I'll say follow the README. It's actually quite simple. In one way that we can also tell you, instead of doing everything from the terminal, in order to pass in the API keys, in the tutorial, when we do create server in Visual Studio Code, we have a mention of a launch JSON configuration. One second. Okay, so you could do this part as well. So from Visual Studio Code, you can do a debug, or I think now it's called run, and add a configuration to add the configuration for Node.js. This will create a new launch JSON file, but you can replace it with the information that we have given you here. When you're gonna need to change your ID here for your client ID and your secret here for your client secret. Once you have that, you can simply save And then from Visual Studio Code, just do the thing that I did, basically run and debug this project. You're gonna get a debug console saying that now it's listening on certain kind of port. You can head over to that port and then get started with the project, okay? Okay, so let me go back to my slides. Okay, we good? So yeah, that was me a minute ago. So now it's gonna be your turn. So basically, again, we're gonna go over through getting your Forge account, getting your Forge app created for you to have the API keys in order for you to use it with the platform. Set up your development runtime editor, and then get the existing app up and running, okay? So, and some of the questions that sometimes come up is that, oh, I have an account, but I started that free trial like 6 months ago, so now it's blocked. The solution ideally will be to get started with the payment of the subscription, but I'm not gonna make you do that today. So you could try to use a different email to sign up just for this bootcamp. So in that way you can take advantage again of a new free trial. And then from there you can get started. Once that expires, I will say, yeah, if you want to continue using the platform and everything, it's needed to do the subscription. And when it comes to the pricing for the subscription, it's $100 a year, which also includes 100 plan credits. So it's basically you buying the credits, and that's it. And then you have access to everything within the platform. So yeah, and then we will come back at 10 a.m. Pacific Time Coast to get started with session 2, which basically will focus into the extension skeleton and the selection handling extension that we're going to be creating in a minute. So feel free to submit your questions. I did see a couple of questions that kind of like popped out. Joao, thank you so much for this. And I think you got everything. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Nice. Thank you so much, man. Okay. Do we have any other questions, or Joao, you want to have any additional comments that you want to give for like tips of the .NET side of it or something like that?
I think you covered it all. Just stick with the version 3.1. I guess the documentation states that they are using 3.0, so the long-term support is 3.1. And if you find any trouble, any problem, just reach us. I can help you with that.
Yep. So yeah, so ping us on the Q&A section. We will be monitoring that from time to time. And we also will see you back at 10 a.m. where we can also ask you if you have any questions for that. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm gonna pause my recording. Okay. So how did it go? I think I saw Joao helping me out with some questions and also doing some conversations with some of you on the chat. And you should have done by now the entire setup of the account, the application, the development runtime editor, and also the existing app up and running. So now we're going to move into the next session, which is going to be focused into the extension skeleton and also the selection handling. But before we move on, I want to know if there are any questions. So I do see one in the chat section from Ali. I think Ali, it's a little bit ahead of the session, so I will go over the stuff that we have prepared for right now, and then as I go over and when I finish, I can help you, Ali, with some of that information. Okay. So any other questions, you can ping me on the Q&A section. and then I will be looking into them. Joao had to step out for a second for another meeting, but he will be back soon. So it's gonna be only me for right now, but we will get through it. Okay. So next thing, it's going to be the extension skeleton. So basically, it's going to be two things, actually. We're going to do the extension skeleton. So we're going to be creating a new JS file with the extension code. We're going to create the new CSS file with the extension toolbar icon. We will include the JS and the CSS file into our HTML. And then also we will be adding the extension to the Forge viewer initialization. So when the time of the viewer comes to load, we will be invoking as well the loading of that extension itself. Next up, we will be doing the selection handling one. So we will be implementing the click handler, list the selected objects, retrieve the object properties, and then isolate the objects as needed. So basically, we're going to be taking care of the first extension itself. So I will be going over where you can see those things within the tutorial. So that way you can reference to it later on. And then also we are recording. Some of you asked in a couple of days before that when the recording is going to be available. It's not going to be available right after this. It's going to become available sometime next week. So I would say just keep an eye for that. We will be doing a blog post about it. So you can get those links. And I'm pretty sure also you will get an email that includes the links to the recordings. So just keep an eye for that, but it's not going to be immediately after this. We need to do some cleanup for those recordings and so on. Okay, so now it's time for demo time, focusing on the extension skeleton and also the selection handling. So let me switch my screens. Where are we? This is the one here. Okay, all right, awesome. So we're going to be focusing into the tutorial part where we have the section for viewer extensions. Okay, so basically a brief description about what the viewer extension itself is. It's basically we're providing a different functionality to the viewer now through a custom code section that will interact with the viewer itself. And so this is basically called an extension. If you're familiar, let's say with Chrome, you know that Chrome has its own extensions as well that allow you to do certain things while you're browsing. So it kind of works in the same way. I guess the same principle kind of applies into this. And then when it comes to extensions, like I said, it can apply into the View Your Models tutorial and also the View BIM 360 and Fusion Models tutorial. So either one of the ones that you guys have and that you have it running, it should actually work, because what we are going to be modifying or adding new files, it's going to be basically on the client side. So we don't care about the server side anymore. That part is done. So again, we should have something like this running, and that will be our starting point for this section. Okay. So now we're going to move into the basic skeleton. So into the extension skeleton itself, in this tutorial, we describe what the basic skeleton itself is and how do we trigger the code that will go into the onClick functionality. So basically, once we create the extension, we do some loading into the console log. So from the console log of Chrome, for example, or Firefox, or whatever you use as a browser, you can see messaging about saying this extension has been loaded. And when we can also unload it, or when we terminate the running of the debugging of the project itself, we will get a messaging also in the console that the extension was unloaded and also removed from the group of extensions that we have at the bottom. If you see here, also we have on the toolbar created. So it's a function that is listening on the time of the toolbar that gets created. So basically this will do a group section where we're going to be adding different kind of extension buttons. So in this case, we're going to be handling the selection handling, the docking panel itself for the model summary, and so on. So it uses functionality that is within the Autodesk Forge viewer, where we get access to different kind of classes itself, like the UI and the control group. And also we can set up and create a new group itself. We're going to be adding those icons and those extensions. Once we have that, we add the new button to the toolbar group. And then from there, we have a button that basically does an action. So when that button itself, the extension, gets clicked, everything that it's inside of this section, it's what it's gonna get triggered. So this could be isolating an element with a certain ID. It can be popping up an alert message that tells you the ID number, opening up a docking panel, exporting data into an Excel file and stuff like that. So some of them are going to be longer than others, but basically the on-click functionality for the extension that we add starts from here. Okay. So it's important to register that extension itself. So once we do that, we also have an option to modify the CSS in order for us to have an icon that shows up into the toolbar. We kind of like set up the size itself of that image icon. We have been using something like Font Awesome Icons, which is an open source library that we can reference to it. So you will be seeing that in a bit. And also the most important part, if you create an extension, your client side itself should know that that extension actually exists. So you need to add a reference into your index.html for the script that basically contains your extension. So if you have looked into the index.html of the project that we have been doing, you will see that we have references for the main CSS file, the Forge3.js file, the ForgeViewer.js file. These ones are kind of like the main ones. So if we want to add an extension to it, we need to do a reference right below the viewer side. Because if we do it before that, it's going to start looking for something that this extension itself refers to in these files, and it's not going to find it. So I'll say just keep it simple, put it at the bottom of that, and then from there we can kind of like move forward. And then the other thing is that within the ForgeViewer.js, we do have the loading of the UI of the viewer itself within a certain element in our index.html, which is called Forge Viewer. So we are going to have to replace this line with this one, because now this extra one has a new section, which is basically extensions. So within extensions, we're going to add, and we can add multiple ones here. We can do just my awesome extension and then comma outside of the quotes, my next extension, comma, my third extension, comma, and we just kind of like keep going, and we can add as many extensions as we want. It's just a matter of how clean do you want to keep your toolbar and so on, and not like overload the screen with those kind of things. So yeah, so that's basically the skeleton. So let's get started with the handling selection. So we are going to be doing from that basic skeleton section that I just mentioned, we're going to be doing the handle selection extension. So we are going to start with creating a new JavaScript file inside of the JS folder, and we're going to call it handle selection.js. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come to here. So we go into public folder, right? Everything is going to be handled today on the client side. Then we go into the JS folder, and this is where we have Forge3 and Forge Viewer. We're going to add a new file here, and we're going to do handle selection extension.js. So now we have this file created. Okay, so now we're going to be adding the handle selection extension class, which will be extending the autodesk.viewing.extension. So basically, because other than that, that extension is not going to know where it needs to go. And this extension, it's going to be happening within the viewer. And that's the reason we are doing an extension of this part. Okay. So once we load that, we can console log the handle selection extension has been loaded. And then we unload that, and then handle selection extension has been unloaded. We create the on toolbar creative function where we're going to create a new toolbar group in case it doesn't exist. In our case, it doesn't exist yet, so we're going to be creating that. And then we're going to be adding that button to the toolbar, which is going to be called handle selection extension button. We're going to have the on-click functionality. For now, it's going to be empty. And then we're going to start setting up a tooltip that whenever we hover over, it's going to give us handle selection extension. We're going to add a class. It's going to be called handle selection extension icon, and then add it to the group as the button itself after we define this. Later on, we register that extension, and then we move into the toolbar, CSS, and so on. So let me do this one pretty quickly. Okay, so I think everything looks okay. So I have my Zoom bar somewhere here. So extension. Yeah, I think it looks okay. So let's save this. So now we're going to get back here. And now inside of the main CSS, this file already exists in our project. So now we can remember that we name a class in the previous one, which is basically called the handle selection extension icon. Since we named that class, we can now give it some style to the button itself. And we're going to be using a location to where the background image itself is coming from. So like I said, we're going to be using the GitHub Font Awesome SVG to PNG file, where we have access to different kind of icons that we can visit and change, and I don't know, use whatever you actually want, that you can go into there and find it. So we're going to do a copy on this one. We're going to go into the CSS main that, as you remember, we did set up something for the app buckets, the Forge viewer size, the body of the entire page, how much we wanted to fill in regards to the entire application. So we can actually continue and go down to here to put up that class that we added. So now we have handle selection extension icon with a background image, a background size, does not repeat, and the position is onto the center of the icon itself. Now we save this. And now we need to load the extension, right? So we need to do a couple of things. We need to reference that new file that we just created into our index.html. If we do not reference that, the project itself doesn't know that this file actually exists. So we need to do that part. So we go into here, we go into the index.html. And like I said, this is the project files. This is where the CSS mention is, Forge3.js is, the Forge viewer.js is. So we can do one here, and we are actually going to do something like just to separate and have everything like kind of like well documented, I guess. This extension. Files, go here. Okay, so now everything that we do after this, it's going to be basically our extension file. So for starters, we're going to do the handle selection extension.js. So we save this, but we need one more step. As I mentioned to you before, our loading mechanism itself does not know the existence of the extension within the viewer. So like I said, if you have already an extension, you can separate them by commas. But if it's the first one that we have, we can just quickly add that extension. So we're gonna copy this one and we're gonna locate this into the forgeviewer.js. So we go into forgeviewer.js, and this is quite a small file, so it's actually quite easy to locate it. And if you see, and I do have an extension already set up here. So this in some way kind of makes it easier because we can just grab the value of this. And then we can do a comma. And then we add the handle extension, selection extension. So we save this, and now we basically did the viewer and the initialization piece to get the element by ID of Forge Viewer, which basically is this one. Okay, so this is where our viewer will be loaded. Toolbar again on the way. And then once we have that, we can start adding the extensions. In this Autodesk.document browser, it's one of those extensions that I mentioned to you before that we do have already available. They do not load as a default, but you could be using them if you find certain kind of use cases for them into your project. So they're actually quite nice to know and then explore and see what capabilities do you have, and then you can always get access to a little bit deeper into the value of the extension and then just play around with them if you want to modify something about it. So now we added handle extension selection, so we save this. We have this thing running. Let me just do a quick cleanup again to do listening on port 3000. Let me see if we missed something. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna run this now without doing this part. So basically it's not gonna do anything, but we're gonna be able to see it. So, and let me open my console here. Yeah, so we don't have anything here right now, but if we click on it and then it starts loading, you see that now we have the console log that we set up. And I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Yes. Yeah, so now we have handle extension has been loaded. And if you see it, we do have that handle selection extension already loaded into our toolbar. If I put the mouse on top of the button, we do get a tooltip again to tell us what this extension is about. But if I click on it, nothing happens. And the reason why it's because we're still missing the action that we need to have into the on-click event. Okay, so we're gonna do that next. Basically, now it's time to replace the execute an action here placeholder with the following isolation selection inside of that on-click event. So this part basically is what we are going to be doing. And the viewer itself works as a JavaScript API, and then we can do access to viewer.get selection. This will give us back a value of an ID. So we're going to be assigning it to a constant of selection. We're going to do a cleanup of the entire selection after this. So we do have a record now of what's going to be that ID. And then if the selection.length is greater than 0, which we already selected, because you can click the toolbar and not select anything, so it's not going to be greater than 0. So if that happens, it's not going to do anything. And well, it will do something, which is basically viewer.isolate 0, and that's going to like wipe out everything that it's ghosted. So it's going to bring the model to its original value. But if we do have something selected, we're going to start iterating through all the selected DVIDs because we can select more than one. If we select one, it's going to be only I need to run this loop only once. But if we have more than one, it's going to go over every single one of them. It will get properties to do a console log of the properties, and it will also do an isolation of that DVID with the viewer.isolate function. Okay, we're going to copy this, we're gonna go into not this one, but handle selection. And if we remember, we have an on-click event. So we can just select this, do a paste. I always forget how do you do this tabbing on Visual Studio Code. I will figure it out to make it look a little bit cleaner, but as of now, so we added this inside of the on-click event. So we can save this. Since we're running on the client side, there is no need for me to restart the server. It's already there. So we can just refresh the page. We click here. Again, handle selection has been loaded. If we click something, it's not going to do anything because we did not select something. But if we do select one, now we get a console and an alert of the isolated floor with ID this, and this, and also the external ID for the Revit object itself gets in a alert message. We say okay, and then we apply isolation into that item. At the same time, also you see that we did a console log of the properties of that selected object, where we have the value. Let me make this a little bit nicer looking. Okay, where we have the value of the DVID. So this DVID, it's basically the database identifier of that object within the viewer. We also have a value for the external ID. So if you're familiar with Revit, you know that you have an access to this kind of external IDs that are unique for each object itself, where we have also access to the name, which is floor 121063-0, and then access to the entire set of properties of that specific item. So if we select here, and then we open the tree, you see that we start getting a lot of similarities. And this is what the viewer itself uses in order to populate the tree of the properties, basically information into the viewer. So we have a way to access. Let's see if we can spot one really quick. Constraints. A lot of stuff in here. So perimeter area volume. So perimeter, we have perimeter here. We expand this one. And then perimeter, it's in the display category of dimensions. Display name is going to be perimeter. Display value is going to be 43149, 43149.6. Basically, it's running it up to millimeters. And is it going to be hidden? No, it's actually going to be showing up. And precision 1, type 3, and the units is going to be in millimeters. Okay. So in the same way, we can access to every single information that it's within this product panel. So, and same thing again, if we do show all objects, and now we want to click this. Wait, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then we click this handle selection. Let me clean this up before that. We're going to start getting one by one. So this is going to be floor 495352. Now isolate pile steel pipe, this ID. Then isolate floor, this ID. And isolate floor, this ID. So now we have, again, 4 items that we selected, and we get access again to all the properties for those 4 items that we just selected. And that's basically the handling selection. Okay. So let me just quickly check what's next. We have, oh, that's it. On time. Beautiful. For some reason I thought we had to go through some other stuff, but no, I think that's it for this session. So let me head back to my slides, so that way I can tell you what's going to be next for you guys, which you just saw. So next up, basically, we're going to be doing, well, you're going to be doing, I already did, going over the extension skeleton. So you could actually go over that extension skeleton, and if you want to try it just to kind of get a little bit more familiar of how that extension itself kind of works, understand a little bit more deeper how to use it, you can do that as well. And then you're going to be doing the selection handling, which I just show you how into implementing that click handler on click event, basically. List the selected objects, retrieve the object properties, and isolate the objects as needed. Okay, so this is going to be the stop for session 2. At 12 p.m. Pacific time, we're gonna get session 3, which is basically gonna be the next extension, which is the docking panels one, the model summary one. And we will also get started with the data preparation for the dashboards, okay? So I do see a couple of questions, and let me just take a look at those. Enrique, sorry, had a problem with the extension skeleton. It didn't load properly, but omitted and used the handling selection, and it worked. Okay. Probably the reason why, Enrique, it's because there was no, it could be a couple of things, right? First one that comes to mind to me, it's that probably the script was not referenced into the index.html. So make sure that you have that script for the awesome extension, which is the skeleton. Yeah, so it's probably the reason why. Basically, in the index.html, you might be missing the reference to the path to where that my awesome extension is set up. And then the next thing to check is within the viewer. Let me actually switch screens again, and I can show you. Script Forge.js, my awesome extension. Okay, so now it's probably on the viewer side then. If you can see my screen, we go into the Forge viewer. Go into line 10, where you have viewer equals new Autodesk viewing GUID, Forge viewer, then you have extensions. Probably you have handle selection here, but you do not have the other one. So I'll say check that. My awesome extension, oh, okay, so you do have it. Autodesk document browser, my awesome extension, handle selection extension. Has it been registered? Script, source, JS. Okay, so let's do the following. Do you wanna share your screen, and that way we can look at it together? So let me stop my sharing. I'm going to bring you as a presenter. So one second, let me find you here. You are here. I'm gonna promote you to panelist, and then we can do some live debugging and check what's going on. All right, Enrique, you can unmute now, and you can also share your screen.
Excellent. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So just trying to share screen. Yeah,
Yes.
I follow. Yeah, I follow the all the work within the my awesome app. You can see my screen.
I see your error already.
Yeah.
The name of no, I can tell you what's wrong. The name of your file, it's not spelled correctly.
It's mean. That's the problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. I think you can do. Let me see. Can you open that menu again? I know Spanish, so I'm pretty sure I can.
You need to get off. Change name.
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome extension.js. Yeah.
Check here.
So, and then we have my awesome. So you did get it right there. You got it right everywhere, but the name of the file is the one that was not correct. So that was going to be my third guess, probably that the name itself, because it does happen.
Yeah, because it's the only one I didn't copy. It's the one that I created, right?
Yeah. It happens to me as well. With that word, I always have to kind of like spell it in Spanish in some way. It's kind of weird. I always say like my me, and then I just make sure that I'm actually writing it correctly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Let me just.
Yeah. Let me see if it just loads. Do you have your server running and all that?
Yeah. Just taking a little because it's running with the BIM 360. But
yeah, but it's weird that it's taking some time to load.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look into it. If it continues having issues, let me know, and we can look into it again.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay. So, great. Okay, I thought I lost you for a second. I was like, oh no. All right, so let me send you back to an attendee. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to open this up again. We're gonna share the screen again. So now you guys it's set up there. And yeah, so let me see if I have answer live. I'm just cleaning up my queue for the questions, so that way I know that everything is set up. Okay, so let me pause my recording. Okay. All right, so welcome back, everybody. Hopefully the setup for the selection handling extension and also the extension skeleton went quite well. If up next, we're gonna be starting to focus into the third section of the bootcamp today, which basically goes into creating the docking panel, and also we're gonna start doing the data preparation for the dashboard functionality that we will be doing on the last section of today's training. So before I move forward, I want to ask if there are any questions on the previous setup. I believe my colleague Joao, I see him online, it's around. So if you have any questions, please submit those on the Q&A. So and that way we can help you out with any questions that you may have. Okay, so I don't see any movement as of now, so I'm gonna continue and move forward. We're gonna get started with the next section, which is basically gonna be focusing into the docking panels. So we will be creating a new extension, very similar to what we did with the previous one of the handling selection. Sorry. We will be implementing also the click handler action. So this will go again into the on-click event for that extension. There are some things that we will be doing when it comes to enumerating the leaf nodes to retrieve the properties of each of the individual objects within the model itself. And then once we have that information, we will start populating that into the panel with the results. On the next one, we will start with the data preparation for the dashboard functionality. So this is completely separate to the docking panel. This is already moving into the third sample that we have for today. So we will start working with the dashboard panel itself, and then also adding the reference of the script for the JavaScript file that we're going to be creating into the index.html. So this part actually might go quite quickly, but we're going to get started right now with the docking panel section. Okay, so we're going to start with the demo time now. So actually, let me stop sharing and switch my screens. Okay, where are we now? Desktop 1. Okay, so we are back into this part. So if everything went well, you're able to use the the extension for the handle selection, like we did on the previous one, that we selected a couple of objects, we press the extension, and this basically isolated the selected pieces of the model, and at the same time on the console log, we got information about each individual piece when it comes to the external ID, the name, the properties of that are pertaining to that part itself. Okay. So now we're going to go back into our tutorial material. And basically, this was the result that we just finished. So now we can start moving along into the next part. And like I said before, some of those like key learning points that we got from the previous session was the familiarization with the use of the get selection functionality within the viewer, the understanding of the DVIDs from the model, how to clear all the selections, how to get the properties from the model, and also how to isolate, basically ghost those individual pieces itself from the rest of the model. And then some additional learning points when it comes to the JavaScript functionality. So how to push items into an array, and also how to iterate with the for each feature. Okay, so now we're going to move into the DocuPanel. So for the DocuPanel, since we're going to continue with the same kind of like structure of the skeleton for the viewer extensions, we're now gonna use a new one, which is gonna be called model summary extension.js. Okay, so we're gonna create this file. Go into here, and again, we select the folder for JS. We type the name model summary extension.js. And we had someone in the previous session that was having issues of the extension not being found. It was because of a typo. So I'll say always make sure that you double check the name. It happens quite often. It happens to me quite often as well, that sometimes it just cannot find the extension that I just created. But most, I will say probably 99% of the time, it's because I did some mistype with the name there. Okay, so now the class model summary extension will be extending again the Autodesk.viewing extension. We have our initialized constructor for this, and at the same time also we're going to start console logging when that extension itself gets loaded, also when it gets unloaded, and then on the toolbar creative, since we already have that toolbar group, which is called the All My Awesome Extension toolbar. When this hits the if statement, basically it's already created. So this _group will get the value of that. So there's not going to be a need to actually recreate a group because we already have it existing in the project. So now later on, we're going to be adding again a new button for it, which is going to be called model summary extension button. The option for the onClick event action that we're gonna be adding later on today, this here, and then also another set tooltip for the model summary extension, adding the class, so in that way we can style it, we can give it an icon, so it's not like just a gray, like a dark gray box without any kind of identifier for that. To later on add the toolbar CSS on the same file for the main CSS, where we do a reference to another icon, which in this case is going to be a dashboard.png. And then later on add the scripting into the index.html, and at the end of the viewer initialization, adding the name for the extension. Okay. And then we will move into this part. So let me get started with this part. So we're going to copy this one. We did create it already, our model summary extension.js file. So we have everything looks good. The class extending the Autodesk viewing extension, the constructor, the load function, the unload, the on toolbar created, pointing out to all my awesome extension toolbar, that if we look into the previous one that we have, It is also called All My Awesome Extension Toolbar. And then adding the new button, which is called the Model Summary Extension button. And the tooltip, adding the class for the CSS of it and registering that extension to later on be able to reference it from the index.html and also to be added into the viewer class. Okay, so now we move down to, we need to get the CSS for that new class that we created, which is called the Model Summary Extension icon. So we're gonna head back into the main CSS. It's very similar to the previous one that we did. The only difference now that it just has a different name. But basically that's it. Okay, and a different icon, sorry. So we have the styling for this. Now we need the reference of the script inside of the index.html. Same thing again, we did these extension files go here. So we can do a script source, and now we're pointing out to the right location. I think if we do command click, oh, now it's gonna be creating a file, but let's say model summary, I think it's spelled correctly, is it? Yeah, summary extension.js on the JS folder. Yeah, I think it looks fine. We save this, and then we need to get the value for model summary to be added into the viewer file, same way that we already added the other extensions. So from here, we can just do comma, the single quotes, paste the name, save it. Let's get started with this. It was kind of idle for some time, so better safe than sorry. So we have now that on the port 3000 again. We're gonna refresh this, load the project. We're gonna see now a new console log, which is basically model summary extension has been loaded. Same as handle selection extension has been loaded, which was our previous one. And as we see in the same group, right? So it did not separate it. If we wanted to separate, we will have to assign this extension into a new group that we create, or in this case, we wanted to group them together because our extensions that we're working on. So we keep it all on the same group that already exists, and we just add it there. And then also we added the icon, so we do see an icon in there, and we do see a tooltip as well. So, but if we click on it, nothing happens. Even if we select one of the parts, nothing happens. And the reason why, it's because we still haven't actually built the functionality that goes inside of the onClick event. Okay, so and that's going to be our next step. So going back to here, we're done up to this point. So now the enumeration of the leaf nodes. Sorry. So enumeration of the leaf nodes basically means that the viewer itself, all the elements in the model itself of the viewer, they can be defined into different kind of categories. Your models contain categories for like families, different parts, materials, and so on. Okay. We do have a blog post that you guys can read about it that explains the enumeration of the leaves a little bit more in detail, and why this is happening. How do you get up to accessing the object tree itself of each of the individual parts of that model? So I'll say this information, it's always good to just kind of like go over and understand a little bit more about this. So basically, again, sorry, my mouse. Basically, we're going to be accessing the object tree of the model through the viewer. And then we're going to start enumerating every single one of those elements within the object itself to later on push it into the leaves array with the values of the DB IDs. So later on, to do the docking panel part, this is when we need to access a new functionality in the UI of the viewer, since what we're going to be doing, it's not only an interaction with the viewer itself, but we need to click the button and make something actually pop out. We need to access the UI class within the viewer. And if you think about it, the pop-out dialog, it's quite similar also to the property panel. And we do have a couple ones. For example, if I click the properties once, this is a pop-out, that it's a docking panel that it's inside of the viewer, so actually does not go out of the viewer. We do have another one, which is the model browser. So we can move this one around. We have the one for document browsers as well. So also same dialogue, same kind of like docking panel that it's available within there. Even the settings too. Settings is also another docking panel. So we can recreate this docking panels if we access that UI class for the property panel of the viewer. So once we have that and we add the property panel itself, our constructor will have information about what kind of title do we want to give a certain ID and like the container, where is it going to go, and so on. So let's start adding these parts. So this we're not going to touch. We don't need to bring this into the project, because this is just an explanation of how the enumeration of the leaf nodes happen. But we will be having that inside of our on-click event, basically to recreate the same thing that we just explained above there. Okay, so if we follow the instructions, basically says the extension will show the results of the viewer property panel. So copy the content to your extension.js anywhere on the file outside of the other functions. So this is quite important, because other than that, we're going to end up with the model summary panel inside of a certain part, and it's not going to be able to be referenced. Okay, so we're going to copy this, go into here, and if we start looking, what do we have that it's matching the same kind of category as the other one, which is also a class? We have this one, right? So this one extends the view and extension. So something that I tend to do, it's quite easy. So I close it, and this opens and closes here. Let me move this out of the way. So opens and closes here. Basically, this entire thing, it's the class model summary extension that extends the Autodesk view and extension. And then we do a registration into the extension manager of that model summary. So what we can do is we can come in here and then just add one more, which is going to be the model summary panel extending this property panel, and then just we make a mention of that. Okay, so now we can extend this again, and now we know that safely it got added to a location where we know it's not going to mess up the rest of the things. Okay, so now we're going to start implementing the functionality for the on-click function. So again, in the execution of an action here, placeholder, we're going to be replacing it with what we have available now for the on-click function. So it's going to check if the panel is created or not. In this case, the model summary panel that we just added at the bottom. It was gonna have a functionality for visibility, so a show and hide docking panel. So whenever we click, it will make it visible. If we click again, it should actually hide it. Or if we click on the X, it should also hide it. So if the panel is not visible, so we can exit that function and then just return. And then later on, we're gonna start with the viewer contains all elements on the model, including the categories, families, or part definition. So we need to enumerate the leaf nodes. And this is something that, again, you can learn more about the enumeration of the leaf nodes in this blog post, and also from the previous part that we just saw above the functionality of this, where we're going to be passing in certain kind of properties of the occurrences of those filter props. In this case, a property name A or a property name B, all the ones that get assigned. And then we are able to get a bulk of the properties that are part of the model itself. And then we basically iterate through each element from there. Okay, so now once we do all that, we're actually ready to show the property panel with the new values that come in, depending of what kind of model do we have loaded. Like I showed you before, if the model itself, it's like a manufacturing one, we might have different kind of information that can be brought up into the model summary. But if it's a like a AEC one, we might also have some kind of other functionality, other information that can be shown on the functionality of this docking panel. Okay, so now we're gonna copy this then. We're gonna head over to here. And then again, we know that we need to implement this inside of the onClick functionality. So we're gonna save this part here. And we are gonna check if everything, let me just see if I'm missing something. I think I'm not. So I think we should be fine. So let me just start this thing again. Did we add it? Yes, we did. Did we add it here? Yes, we did. So now let's go into here, refresh this page, click on it. Everything I did was correct. We should see something. I do have an error, so let's see what's going on. Get all these components, the PVIDs. Did we? Oh, right. 1 second. Let's see. Might have to get another model because this model might not have certain information that we need. Or I probably did something wrong, and that's what I need to look into. So this one's a little bit smaller. Take a bit of time to go up. Well, it can be because I did. Hang on 1 second and see if I have to re-upload this one. Yeah. So right now, sample, start translation in this, and while this thing translates, I can actually go back into seeing if I did not miss something or I messed up something, which could happen. So this dot get all these components, DB IDs get filtered.
I think it's missing the get all leaf function, right?
Yeah. This
on the
one.
top of the page. Yes.
Yeah. That's why I have you here. Okay. All right. So get a leaf. Yeah, because other than that, basically this dot get leaf components doesn't find it, but now we do. Yeah, that's what it was. Good catch. All right, so now let's try to see if this thing translated. It's almost there. So didn't have anything yet. Oh, 97. All right, good. So now, still not getting. Did I save it? I did save it. Okay, so that's not going to error anymore. Funny thing is that it's not showing me anything, which is quite strange. This processing blocked. Oh, this is funny. Let me do some debugging on this because it should actually be showing something. But it's empty, and I don't know why it's empty. Okay. I probably missed something. So let's just back up. Let's see. Model summary, enumeration of the leaf nodes. We get this. Get all leaf components. So we need to enumerate. It should be added to our extension class. This is base on the blog post. So in the blog post, we do have the enumeration and we do function get all leaf components with the parent. So get all leaf components in this here. Let's see this. I think it's in the right place. You can put it in your own file outside of the other functions. Now it's time to replace. Did I not cut something correctly? Is that what it is? Yeah, this should be giving me the information for the material. Okay. All right. So I do have a backup. So let's not worry about that part. Let me try to get that backup up. I want to just do a quick comparison into what we have. I believe it's this one. I might have done something weird before. So we do have get a leaves here. Get a leaf components. Is it based on the location? I don't think it's based on the location where I placed it. Could be. Too big.
Oh, we have Lucas Gallo send a tip here. Filter
Say it again?
props. Filter props, according to Lucas Gallo.
I did not understand what you said.
You changed the name of the properties to filter.
Did I? Where? Like, I think what is happening, it's something with the, I don't think it's the location, to be honest, but there is something that probably changed. Filter props. This is going to be an error. Ooh. Create. Yeah. I'm doing it outside of this, which makes sense. Should be fine. And I want to do comparison to the other stuff that I have here. Filter props. To me, it looks the same. I don't know about you, but let me try it. So, Still not showing me anything. I'll do one more thing. I'm gonna have to do just a quick. I want to see what's going on with this thing. Because if there is something in the tutorial that got missed, I want to understand what is it and why it's not working. Because if I'm having this issue, probably you will have it too.
Lucas has the hand raised.
Yeah.
Could you let him
Yeah,
speak?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe?
1 second. Where is he? Lucas, allowed to talk. You can unmute now, Lucas.
Hi. I think that I think that the problem is on click the function, because inside the on toolbar created.
Yes, I remember now. Yeah, as soon as I just saw the filter props material that you placed, I remember that there is something that we need to change, and that's the reason it's not working. All right, so yeah, good catch.
And you're going to receive the prize for
Yeah,
this
exactly.
challenge in your address. Congratulations, man! You're the winner.
It's basically this part that I did not read at the end. So yes, so as mentioned, you need to define the filter props appropriated for your models. So the above video uses material, design status, and type name. And if we see what we are passing in here, this is what we need to change. So there is no such thing as a property name A or a property name B. Those are just default names for you to do what I did not do, which is reading this part after. So now, if we look into the code, I do have on the part that works now, the define filter props. And in this case, I did type the category and the material. So this is the reason that it was not reading any information before, because there's no such thing as a filter property called property name A and property name B. Okay. So Lucas, thank you so much. And we were not joking. So I'm going to get your address later on. And we will send you some forge swag as a thank you for spotting the error. Okay. All right. So let's see. So we got to this point. So yeah, I think it might be a good idea, Joao, to actually mention this before somewhere here. Because other than that, you get to the conclusion, right? What happens if you don't scroll down? Yeah, so
yes.
Can you take a
I'll
quick
let you
note?
know. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, because it's like, it makes sense that you need to do it, but if you're scrolling down and doing this and reading this part, probably there's a lot of comments, so you might miss, like I just did this part. And I've done this tutorial 1,000 times, but I remember I had something that was not matching correctly. So yeah, thanks again. So, okay, so now basically we do have the model summary of the model where we define material and category, and we could get some other values for those filter props. And this is something that we can identify later on also with the next part of the tutorial that we're going to be doing. So up to now, our sample itself should look something like this. So we do have an access to getting all the information from the model in regards to the category. So we know that this model itself has 46 walls, 16 doors, 144 curtain wall mullions, and it kind of keeps going like that. And that's going to be on the category. But now when it comes to material, we know that material properties kind of match 44 times for the glass, iron cast, aluminum, metal, and so on. Okay. And we could keep adding more information and more properties into here. And it's basically from the part that we missed. So we can start adding here, comma, and then something else, comma, and another one. Or we can even give in the docking panel the option of a drop-down menu, for example. So we can populate all the different values that are available per the model. And then based on the drop-down, we can select, oh, I want to see material right now. Or, oh, I want to see category right now, and so on. Okay. So that's going to be it for this model summary extension. So let's move forward with the other part, which is going to be basically the dashboard functionality. And before we move in, I do see a chat message. Lucas, it's running perfect. Okay. Let me close this. All right. So now when it comes to the dashboard functionality, this is kind of like playing a bit with a couple of things. Some CSS in order to make this kind of like smooth transition, not to look very choppy and so on, that we use on the page where we are removing the size of the bootstrap column into switching it to a different one, and now adding a new one that it's going to have that it's going to contain our charts inside of that part. Okay. So the initial part is to be adjusting the layout. But I think, let me see something really quick. So we do adjustment of layout. No, we're going to do data preparation, and then we're going to do adjustment of layout. So we're going to go into prepare the data. So the viewer itself contains, like you already know, your model itself contains quite a lot of data. And we can organize this in quite a couple of different ways. We can organize it in arrays or some kind of like hash table and so on, where we have an option to access based on the kind of property and also based on the kind of object itself, information about all the different IDs that are pertaining to that kind of filter one. So we're going to be reusing the get all leaf components that we just did on the previous extension. And we're going to be creating also a new folder within the JavaScript folder. And we're going to be creating a new file called dashboardpanel.js. Inside of dashboardpanel.js, we're going to be creating a new class, which is going to be our dashboard panel. Inside of the dashboard panel, we're going to be creating dashboard panel chart, which will extend dashboard panel. And from here, we're going to start getting everything ready for our data itself to be prepared to be later on brought up into the canvas of the charts.js library. Charts.js allows you to basically assign colors into the amount of data that we're going to be populating into the chart. But the thing is that since depending on what kind of model we're using, we might have elements. We don't know exactly how many colors are we going to be needing. So we're going to do a simple function to generate colors in a random way in order to be assigned to the objects in the chart. And if we have 10 objects that need to be placed into the chart, this is going to generate 10 random colors. If we have 15, same thing. If we have 5, same thing. Okay. And then we're going to start formatting the model itself into this class called model data. And then here we, again, take into the get all leaf components. So from this part, we're gonna start getting the properties directly from the viewer into iterating every kind of category. And there is a piece here that says some adjustment for Revit that needs to be placed because they tend to bring in some kind of prefix, which is the Revit one. So we need to just do that removal of the prefix. And then once we organize that data, I think it should be all ready to get labels, get count instances, get IDs, check if it has the properties. Again, we do need the function of the get all leaf component, similar to what we just did, and do a reference into the dashboard panel.js. Okay, so this is quite a long thing. So we're gonna start with copying, and then remember, inside of the JS folder, we're gonna create dashboard folder and then dashboard panel.js. This is not it, this is it. So inside of JS folder, dashboard. Inside of the dashboard, we're gonna do dash or panel.js. I don't remember. I think it's just, this is not capital D, it's like this, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yes. Yeah. And then copy is here. So again, we will have functions to get ID, get count instances, get the labels, check if it has the property, get all leaf components, use of the get all leaf components, passing in the length of how many DVIDs are pertaining per certain kind of category that we will be defining later on into a different class, not the dashboard panel. This is for the panel, not the dashboard itself. Property of this property use. Okay, yep. So this will be basically need to be referenced also into the index.html. So we're gonna do this one again. Now this are dashboard files. We're gonna do, here we have this, so we're here. Yeah, we do. So JS dashboard, okay, I do see a typo here that it's referencing to a capital D. Actually, yeah, let's do this. I don't know why we have a mix of capitals and.
That's tricky when you move to Heroku, for instance.
I know. So dashboard panel.js, dashboard panel.js, dashboard here. Yep. Yeah, these ones are the ones that we need to do either capital or not, or just have everything in lowercase. But okay, so now we start like getting basically the files in here. So up to now, I think I did go over because we had that debugging problem. But up to now, so this is what we get to save. Let me stop my share and move to the other one again. And okay, so as of now, basically, we have reached to creating the docking panel, creating the new extension that basically contains that UI class panel, implement the click handler, add the enumerated leaves function, and then also populate the panel with the results. So do not commit the same mistake that I just did. And Lucas, again, thank you for that. Make sure that you type the property that you want your model summary to actually display. One safe one to type, it could be material and also type name. This one probably most of the time are gonna be present in most models. At least material it is, I know that. Unless it's kind of like an OBJ or something like that that doesn't have any information. But if you're using one of the Revit ones or one Inventor one or so on, you will do have material available. And then the other thing is just initialization of the data preparation for the dashboard piece that we're gonna be finishing up later in the session 4. I do see a chat available. All of them are dashboard capital. Yeah, I kind of figured that, Enrique. So thank you. So I think, yeah, so let's just keep it everything with the dashboard capital. Joe, if you can take a quick note of looking into the capital and lower cases that we have in that tutorial, and that way we can fix that as well.
Noted.
Thank you, man. And I think that's it for now. So let me quickly stop my, well, actually not stop, but pause my recording. So I am recording again, and let's get started. So for session 3, your turn was to do the DocuPanel extension, and then later on start with the data preparation for the dashboard panel that we're going to be doing in this section. So session 4 basically is going to be focusing into adjusting the layout of that sample, and at the same time also adding the charts. So before I move on, do we have any questions? I don't think I saw any questions during the break again. So, and I think, Joao, are you still around? Good to see you there.
Yes.
Yeah, you are.
Only
Okay. All right.
only one question, but
Yeah.
more regarding the translation. So
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So in that case, we can move along. And so for this section, basically, the wrap up, it's creating this three new files and also adjusting the main CSS in order to create that kind of like animation flow for us to be able to display the charts itself. We will be creating also a bar chart and a pie chart. It's more like a donut chart, actually. I don't know why we named it pie chart, but it's a round chart, something like that. So we will be working on that part right now, and that way we can wrap up. Feel free to kind of like follow along. We do not have any kind of break again to come back. So this is basically the wrap up, and then we'll see how that goes. All right, so time for demo. Let me switch my screens. Where are we? Here. All right, okay, cool. So we were doing before the preparation of the data. We need to go back one step and then start working on the adjustment of the layout itself. So again, inside of the folder that we already created, which is called dashboard, in the JS folder, we're going to be creating a new file, which is called dashboard.js. This dashboard.js is basically going to wait for that document, I guess the page itself, to load when it comes to a certain specific part of the viewer. In our case, we are going to have an event listener that it's going to be waiting for the geometry of the model to load completely before the dashboard panel readjustment actually gets triggered. And the reason for this, it's because the dashboard itself gets populated with data that is part of the model. And if the dashboard starts loading before we have the model completely loaded, we're going to be missing some data. And that's going to give us some strange behavior or even no behavior at all. So, but the viewer itself has the capability of listening to certain kind of events that happen within the instance, the scene of the viewer itself. And one of them, it's that geometry loaded event. So when the geometry loaded event gets triggered, we are going to be loading the panels to get started. So from there, also, load panels will be doing a gathering for the data itself from the model. It will be emptying the dashboards because we don't want to get like duplicated dashboards if we switch models or anything like that. And then from there, we're going to be passing in the loading part into the panel with the ID of the dashboard, the viewer, and also the data that comes in. We will be also doing an adjustment of the layout. So this is what I said before. We need to figure out where the dashboards are going to be placed. So we're going to have a third column that is going to be called dashboard. And from there, we have currently using from the Bootstrap library, column small 4 for the part of the 3. So this basically, it's column small 4. And then we have column small 8 for the viewer. If you're using Bootstrap, everything needs to add up to 12. So if we remove one of them, and then let's say this 4, we make it a 2. So then we have 2, 7. That doesn't add up to 12. So we're missing a 3 there. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be removing the class of the column small 4, but we're going to be adding a class for this row 0, which is the 3 of column small 2. And we're going to be using a class that's called transition width, which I will show you in a bit from the CSS, in order to make a certain kind of animation with a timer in order to reduce the panels itself. And then from there, we're going to do the same thing again for the viewer. We're going to change the size of the viewer from a column small 8 to a column small 7. But these two, they add up to 9. So we're missing 1. But after the model itself, like the viewer, gets reduced to that size, we are going to be adding a new class, which is going to be the column small 3. So 372, that adds up to 12. And then we have transition width set up. And now that column small 3 is going to contain the dashboard panel. Okay, so let's get started with this part. So we're going to copy the clipboard, and we have to name it dashboard.js. So let's go into here. We're going to add a new file, and dashboard.js. Paste this document. Okay, and now when we create the dashboard, we're going to be passing in the categories of what we want that dashboard to show us. Like I said before, material, it's a property that most likely every single model will contain. If we make it very specific for construction models, and then all of a sudden we decide to load a manufacturing model, it probably will be missing the category or just the property itself, sorry, and it will not load that chart. So for now, we're going to keep it simple as just naming it material. Then we can switch it to something else. Okay, so now we have this one here. Let's go back here. And then we also need to do the dashboard.js reference into the index.html. So we go into the index, and actually I can do this one here. Let's go back. So now we have JS dashboard.js, the one that we did before, which is the dashboard panel. So JS dashboard panel. Let's save this one. And now we can add the CSS functionality. So the size of the dashboard basically is going to have a certain height. So in that way, it doesn't basically go out of the screen, because we have I forgot the name of this bar, header bar. No, it's not a header bar. It's kind of like a check what a nav bar. Yeah, that's the name. So it's not gonna go out, but then we're gonna be adding the class transition with, which I explained you, that basically it's gonna have an access to the CSS property of the transition, where we're gonna work onto the width with a 1 second ease in out. So that basically will do some smooth transition within a second in order to reduce the panels and just make it look a little bit more interactive, a little bit more like visual attractive, not very choppy that we wipe out the screen and then we reappear with the other stuff. That doesn't look too good. So we're gonna get this CSS set up. So we go into the CSS. We can leave the two extensions that we have. They do not interact with each other. So we define the stuff for the ID of the dashboard and then the two classes for the transition width and also the dashboard panel with a certain width, padding, and display block. So we save this one. And now up next, we're gonna move into we did panel already. So we did prepare the data. And now we can move into adding the charts. And sorry again about my mouse. So adding the charts is actually quite simple. We have, we're using a third-party library, which is called charts.js. So charts.js, it's an open source HTML5 library that allows you to do representation of data through visual components. It can be a bar chart, it can be a donut chart, it can be line charts, and different charts are available within here. They have their own documentation into what do you want to pass on. Like I told you before, you can specify the colors, but since we don't know our data entry, how many objects are going to be depending on the category, because it kind of varies from model to model, we might as well just do something automated into generating random colors based on the amount of length that array is going to have. And then from there, we're able to basically display the charts itself. So there are some steps onto here on how to get started, what kind of configuration you can do to the charts. You can do line charts, like I said, you can do bar charts, so on. Our case, we're going to be doing bar charts. So bar charts go quite simply as the type of the chart is going to be a bar. The data is going to be passed on as data. So this needs to be predefined before. And then the option on the scales, from where is it going to be starting, right? So if it's going to be started on the y-axis, if it's going to be started on the x-axis, I think we could do something like x here. It starts like switching basically the look in the area where it goes. And then it shows you all the different properties that are available for each of the charts itself. Okay, but so for you to know, this is the library that we're using. And then, okay, so but in order for us to be able to use chart.js, we need to do a reference to the CDN of that library. Okay, so it's basically a reference to the chart.js version that we're going to be using. It needs to go in our index.html along the way where all the head tag is. So we're going to copy this one, go into the index, and then as we know, if we see this, we have CDNs for Bootstrap, for jQuery, JS3, which is what we're using for the 3, and then also some other ones for the Autodesk Forge APIs, and then our files and so on. So we can actually do it where we have all the other CDNs. So we can paste this one here. Script. Then once we have this, we can now move along and start building our first chart. So we're going to be building a new file called panelbarchart.js. And basically, it's a bar chart class that is going to be extending the dashboard panel chart that we created in the previous session. From here, we're going to be loading that div into the container of the dashboard panel chart, and then start drawing the chart. So since we're going to be doing basically just in a 2D context, the bars that are going to be displaying into the chart, and then also using the function that we created before for doing generation of colors randomly, we're going to be assigning that to those two variables that we will be later on using inside of the creation of the chart, where we define the type of chart that we want to have, which is a bar chart. And then the data, when it comes to passing in information about the labels that the model data it's giving us based with the property of use, which in this case is material, as we predefined on the other one. And we can switch that one, okay? And then passing in the data set, depending of what's going to be the count instances of how many of those things are going to be part of it, what's going to be the color for that, what's going to be the color border. And since we're accessing this color variable, we know that it's generating random colors every time it gets accessed. And then also what's going to be the border width. When it comes to the options, we can set up what's going to be the scale and in what kind of axis this chart is going to be placed. And then at the same time also, we have a chance to include an onClick function into here. So if by including an onClick function into the chart, every time we click on one of those elements of the chart, we have a chance to trigger a certain action. And one of those actions that we are allowed to trigger, it's something within the viewer. And we're going to reuse the stuff that we have from the handling selection. And what we're going to be doing is basically isolating the entire array of the IDs that are matching the category or the property and use that I'm clicking into the chart. And based with that, it's going to get, if we select, let's say, doors or material glass, it's going to isolate everything and just display what matches the material glass. Okay? Same thing for the pie chart. The only difference with this, it's the type. So you could basically redo again the same thing, and now we're just going to give it a different type. So I can change this donut one to be another bar chart, or I can change this one to be a pie chart or line charts and so on. Or it can, like, I can make it as well as a bar chart, but with a different category. So in that way, my data is going to be visualized in a different way because I'm focusing on a different property. Okay, so let's get started with this. So we're going to copy this one and we're going to type panel bar chart.js. So inside of dashboards again, we're going to do panel bar chart.js. Paste this one here. It is the bar one. So we're good with this. And then we're going to do the same thing for the pie chart. So again, dashboard folder, panel pie chart.js. Thing again for this, we know that it's on click. We have the donut type, draw chart, load, pie chart extends, dashboard panel chart. Okay. And now the last step, since we created two new files, we need to make sure that we're referring them into the index.html as well. Other than that, when this thing tries to look for them, it's not going to find them. So we need to make sure that they are referenced in there as well. Okay, so now we add the two scripts. It says like the dashboard, it's now ready to run and launch on the localhost 3000. There is a typo here. We're missing a, yes, we're missing a colon there. Okay, but it's basically localhost 3000. So if the model itself does not contain the material property or any other kind of property that you assign, you will get a pop-up saying that the material property, it's not allowed for the pie chart. But like I said, we can have the material one setup, because most likely most of the CAD models that we can load, they do have material available. We can change it to something else later on. I will show you one later. Okay, so now let's go back to here. Let's refresh this. And I think everything should be up to where it needs to be. So we go back here, we refresh. And as of now, nothing has happened because if you remember, we have an event listener that will trigger the dashboard as soon as we have the model completely loaded with the geometry. So if we select one, we get the model, geometry is loaded, and now we got the bar charts and the pie chart. So if you see, we can get like tooltips of this. So let's say everything that is glass. So now we're gonna isolate everything that is glass, and now we're able to actually see it, okay? So now, and same thing for the pie here, because it's basically the same kind of data, the same kind of property that we selected. Now we can probably try another one. We know that Revit files itself have something that's called category. So we can go ahead and actually go into dashboard here. Let's change this one to category. Refresh this one. Okay, so now you see, I do have something different than the one that I have below here. And I have category now that has information about everything that it's a floor, everything that it's a wall, all my doors. So I have doors being highlighted. These are basically like highlighting everything that's a family itself. So I'm pretty sure I have one for furniture here. Yep, I have it here. So now I can visualize all the furniture, okay? And that's basically it when it comes to the adding of the dashboards into your application. So we prepared the data, we curated that data based on the kind of property that we're selecting. Something that can be an expansion later into here would be something like the M360 reports. So if we sign in, test, go to files, find my folder. Let's do this one. So this is basically a combination of that, but now we have a chance to get access to all the different like properties that we're able to use. This is the reason I know this one. So we can change it from there. We can change it from that kind of like drop down. So you can have a drop down that basically populates everything in there. So that way you don't have to be changing it manual inside of your code. You just basically give the user the option to do something like this. And the code to do this, it's available in our GitHub. If you look for the Ventures60 reports app, you can find it in there. And you're gonna start seeing a lot of similarity when it comes to the charts part. Okay, so before we move it into being your turn, I said that I was gonna show you some extensions that we have available within the viewer. So in the viewer documentation, so if you go into documentation and then look for the viewer itself, go down to API references, there is a section here, it's called extensions. So extensions itself, you can have use of different extensions, like for example, the document browser. If you remember from here, a model for Revit does have different kind of documents that are available. so you can visualize them in a thumbnail, so you can switch from one part to the other. You see that this thing also reacts to it because we're loading a new model, right? So, and then same way, we can go back into the 3D one. And once that geometry is loaded, we get everything loaded again, which is basically the same data, but the model itself, the viewer itself, it's kind of like every time there's a new geometry loaded event gets triggered, it will reload the data itself. Okay, so you could use the ones that are part of this, and you can start looking into the different methods that each one of them have. There are other ones for, let's say, split screen extension. So let's say you want to do 2 screens of the viewer next to each other. You can use something like this. We have a minimap extension as well. So if you want to do something like a gaming navigation into a minimap, you can add the minimap. And there is another one that is actually not listed here, but we know about it. So this is kind of like your bonus trick for you to take home. And it's called visual clusters. So if you are familiar with the exploding model that we have in the viewer, that basically you can break the model apart, right? So it just breaks the model apart. You can see each individual piece from there. But when it's a large model, you're just gonna see a lot of pieces, okay? But what happens if we could do something like a control explosion based with a certain kind of filter on it? So this is the reason that I switched this bar into being the category, because we have one that's called visual clusters, and it focuses on the category. And this only works for Revit files. But if we set this, we can actually do a control explosion into letting you visualize everything in like different categories. So let's say you are kind of like a supplier of doors. You can see the different doors that are basically available within this model, and then you can focus into that part. And something that I found out not too long ago, which was actually quite interesting, is that you can, for example, from here, select the doors, right? So now all the doors are selected. If you do a visual cluster and you have a category selected, it will only put everything of the stuff that you have selected. It will not break the model apart. It will just focus into one of the things that you got selected. So if you see your model now, it's actually quite nice, but the doors are not part of it. I don't know if this was intended when this thing got created, but I have found it that it's actually quite interesting because we can focus into another category and then just do all the furniture. And then now we can start focusing into the furniture again. So yeah, so that's a little bonus for you. You can enable this extension from the viewer code. So if you go into the Forge viewer, in the same way where you enable the extensions, you can do the Autodesk document browser, which I show you. And then you can do also Autodesk.visual clusters. So actually, let me copy you this too, if you guys want to test that out. Just remember that they need to be done on a Revit model, because other than that, you're not going to have access to that. So everyone, and here you go. Okay. So let me switch to my slides. That way we can continue from there. Where are we? Here. Okay. So now it's your turn basically to work on the adjustment of the layout, adding the dashboard class for the dashboard.js, adjusting the main CSS, add the bar chart, basically the panel chart, the panel bar chart, and the panel pie chart to be added. And that will be it for today's training. So now it's a chance for you to ask any questions. And one thing that I like to do most of the times also is just to kind of get a sense of how did it go. There is a function in your Zoom for you to be able to raise a hand. So if you guys got to the end and you are seeing your dashboards in your screen, you're seeing your extensions loaded into the toolbar and everything went well, can you do a raise of hand? Oh, thank you, Amon. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Lucas. We're gonna be waiting for some other ones. Awesome, awesome. Cool. Yeah, it's getting there. Awesome. Yeah, so thanks for letting me know. Now, oh, keep coming. Good. All right, so now, if you have questions, and I do see one in the Q&A, the other extensions are quite fantastic. The transformation extension. Yeah, I agree. That one is a nice one too. So yeah, there are like a lot of different extensions there that you guys can play around with it. It's always good to basically kind of like go over. And while I wait for some of the other ones to reach out with questions and so on, I can show you. Let's see. Sorry, my power went out of Word. Following to view the last 5 minutes from today. Hi, Noah. Yes, the only thing is that it's not going to be immediate today, the recording. We're going to be sending those next week. But if you need help with something specifically, let us know which part did you missed, and then maybe we can basically direct you into which way to take. Complex can the data source be? I previously used Power BI on Revit data files to make visualization. Is there a future in Forge for similar? Yeah, well, data itself can be quite complex, to be honest. We have done a lot of the stuff with Power BI as well, where we send out the data from Revit. So I think what you're doing, it can be replicated directly from Forge. And then instead of using the charts.js into your application, you can actually be bringing the dashboards from Power BI into the application itself. And I think we do have some samples that use Power BI instead for the representation of the data. So I don't think it's gonna have any kind of limitations into that regard. Okay, all right, good to hear, Noah. Yeah, sure thing, Sunjit. Okay, so let me move along. So tomorrow, it's our last day for the bootcamp. I'm not gonna be here. It's gonna be one of my other colleagues, but he's also quite fantastic. Are you doing, Joao, tomorrow the .NET,
Yes.
or is that Augusto?
Yes, I'll be. No, it's Augusto is gonna be doing that, but I'm gonna be helping with Q&A also.
Okay, all right, awesome. So yeah, so we have someone doing the .NET one, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Dennis Grigor, who was my other colleague, going to be
Yes,
doing
Dennis
that
Grigor,
on the Node.js side of it for design automation. So let's say if you have been doing plugins in something like AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, 3ds Max, or Civil 3D in the past, and now you want to kind of like unlock the chance for you to do it directly on the web. So without the dependency of actually having Revit at all, you can just use Design Automation, which has hosted engines in the cloud for Revit, AutoCAD, and so on, the ones that I mentioned. And then you can automate processes in there. So let's say you have geometry that you want to change from a model that it's hosted on BIM 360 with another one that comes in from Inventor, you can do a combination of the two engines and then just let that automation take care of itself to later on return you the new model already hosted in BIM 360. So you did not have to open Inventor, Revit, or anything like that. You just define the task. And then if it's a repetitive task, you can get a lot of benefit from using something like design automation. And yeah, thank you guys. Do we have any other kind of questions that I can answer to you today? If not, I think, Joao, anything else you want to add?
No, it's all good.
Oh, and I was going to mention, yeah, I'm going to mention something. If you like the platform and if you want to have a chance to win some prizes, get some swag or anything like that, we are going to have our second Forge Hackathon, which actually it's going to start with a pre-event next Friday. And then the following week, it's going to be an entire week dedicated to the hackathon with the help from the developer advocates, basically my team and Joao's team as well. We're in the same team, helping you guys build applications to tackle certain challenges that we have designed for you to have a chance to win prizes. And the prizes, don't worry.
Next Friday, right? Is the
Yes.
Friday.
So next Friday, we're gonna do a pre-hackathon event in order to just kind of like chat around, see who's gonna be attending and so on. Actually, let me send you guys a link because also for the first 100 registrations, we're gonna be sending like some cool new swag that we have, and we're quite close to that number as well. So I will say take advantage of that. And it's also a good opportunity for you guys to come and win some prizes. We had amazing prizes last year. We had like Oculus Quest, we had iPads, we had what else did we have? Like Bose headphones and stuff like that. So we're not traveling, we're not doing a lot of use of the budget. So we just wanna basically reward you guys with some cool prizes and swag for you to come and build like amazing applications. So gather a team. If you're a one-man team, that's still okay. Or a one-girl team, that's still okay as well. So, but if not, if you want to combine effort with other people, that's the reason we're going to have the pre-hackathon event. So you guys can join and get to meet some other people in the event, and then just, I don't know, crank up some ideas and then see if something like that can spark your interest and be there.
Just one comment is actually on 24th of September.
Yeah. And I see one last question. So it might be an open-ended question. Oh, okay. But what would be a realistic next step for beginners? I know there are accelerators, hackathons, integrators, but they all seem to require experience and a full idea of what you want to build. Okay, so I can tell you based on experience that I have helping other people that they came to us as beginners. And I can tell you that maybe 2-3 years after I bump into each other again, they are like building this amazing stuff out there. I think the answer could be said in a way, what actually sparks your interest? What makes you curious about the use of the platform? Because the potential of this thing, it doesn't have to be focused into only one industry. It can be something that, for example, if you work on the manufacturing industry or you work on the construction industry and you identify something that you see the platform being a way to basically solve that, definitely it can be going towards that. Yes, accelerators, hackathons, events that we tend to have, like this bootcamp and so on. It's another way. But I think a good next step could be look into the success stories that we have with other customers, and also look into the blog posts and the samples that we have available, because this could give you an idea into what you want to build next. Um, like I said, we're around, so anything or any question that you may have into, you have this kind of idea, you don't know which way to go because maybe you don't know much the technology or you don't know much the industry, we're always can help you out and to direct you into basically your next step itself. I'm not saying we're gonna give you all the stuff and in order for you to only hit play, but we want to teach you how to fish. So definitely, like, think about something that sparks your interest. Keep exploring the platform. There are a lot of different things of content that we have online. We have an upcoming conference, which is our big Autodesk University conference, where we do have a couple of like talks about Forge. It's free to attend. It's still all virtual, so you can sign up for that and then join and see how this world itself of Forge, then Autodesk, and so on can kind of like benefit you from getting more ideas into what to work on. And yeah, I could continue talking about all this stuff, but I don't know how how long is it gonna. Like you said, it's an open-ended question. Okay, so now I don't know which screen are you guys seeing. What you're seeing? Oh, I know which one. Okay, so then when it comes to support, so we use Stack Overflow with the idea in mind that we wanna expand the community of users. If you're a software developer, you know, the like Stack Overflow itself, like with this pointing system and everything, kind of even helps you later on in your career if you wanna interview at a different company and so on. Like this kind of gives you that validation that you're being kind of like earning points about some kind of topic that you're familiar with and that you want to contribute to it. So we wanted to just bring that in, and we didn't see the point of actually creating our own support system like that. So we just opened that up for Stack Overflow. You can use the following tags: Autodesk-Forge, -Viewer, Model Derivative, and Design Automation. This gets into one of our QN systems, and then we can look into it to give you an answer for that. Now, if you have any kind of private data, stuff like that, that you don't want to share through that platform, you can send us an email to forge.help@autodesk.com, or you can always set up a 30-minute call with either of the advocates. And we have a calendly.com doctor is in option. So you can find that. Let me stop my share and then share my other stuff, and that way I can show you what I'm talking about. Oh gosh. Share desktop support. That's what I wanted to do. 1 second. Community, all events. So we tend to do virtual coffee breaks every other Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Did we have one today? No, right? It's next week. I don't remember.
Oh, it's next week.
Yeah, it's next week, right? Okay, so yeah, next week we're gonna have a virtual coffee break. So basically you can join. We talk about different kind of topics for like 30 minutes with other community members. So feel free, you're part of the community. You attended this bootcamp, so why not? You can schedule one-on-one times with either of us. You can go into booking an appointment. We have this Calendly setup where you have access to all of my team, and then just schedule there a time with either of us. it's a 30-minute call, so you can come in with any kind of question that you may have about the platform, and then we can talk about it. And depending on what kind of time zone you're located, I would say check the different time zones. We have people around the world, so definitely just don't hesitate and reach out to us there. And then the other thing is that we host accelerators. So we have accelerators that happen every month or so. We took a break July, August, and September because we were going to have the bootcamp and also the hackathon in a couple of weeks. So, but they're going to start resuming in October. No, November, sorry. So yeah, you can, if you have a project in mind of something that you want to work on, you can submit a proposal there in order for us to review it and then just have you over for a week in order to help you out build your proof of concept and then just work together from there. And I think where to find it? Which one, Enrique? Oh, the hackathon. Okay, yeah. All right. And I think that's going to be it. I think, yeah. Thank you again for everybody who was able to join. Happy to hear, well, actually see your hands up, meaning that you were able to finalize the tutorial. For you, those of you that want to browse about the recording again, just keep an eye on it. We're going to be sending those next week. Probably we're going to be publishing them also in a YouTube channel or just a blog post where all the recordings are going to be set up. There was an earlier recording from this thing material, but for the European side with Peter Bross, he's actually quite good as well. So if you want to mix it up and you want to switch the voice of teaching, you can go to Peter Bross as well. Okay, so once again, thanks, Joao, for the help. Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Jaime.
We'll catch you up next time. All right. Okay, so let me stop my recording.